Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook podcast, and I'm happy to be here with the still Grandmaster of cyberpunk.
You
One of my
flatter
favorite,
me.
one of my favorite point-and-click adventure creators, and Technobabylon in particular. You probably know James Dearden of Technocrat Games as the creator of Technobabylon. Currently working on Technobabylon 2. Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, James.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, yeah. How have things been going? I think last time we talked was Blade Runner 2049 had just come out. That was about a year and more ago. So, how have things been?
Yeah, it's been productive. We've actually finally got things looking that look like a game coming together now.
Yeah,
A lot of the since Technobabylon came out, a lot of it's been experimenting and getting the hang of Unity, but now I think we're finally getting something that actually looks and feels like a game.
yeah. I've been seeing the screenshots. It's been looking really great. I like as I understand, you're using Unity, correct? Is that, or am I mistaken?
That is correct. Yes, we moved on to Unity from AGS. I I think Dave Gilbert and Wajitai maybe wants to do more with AGS in the future as well, but he has been trying Unity. But myself and Ben Chandler, Wajitai's artist, have been getting so much done in Unity. I think we might be able to sell him on his future projects being Unity based as well. But for me, I think there's no going back now with just the amount that I can do with Unity.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a more powerful engine. I started in Unity as well. Then I jumped to AGS, but it's yeah, the screenshots. Some people asked if it was 3D, but I mean, I from what I gathered, it's I mean, obviously Unity can do 3D. And I understand you do 3D modeling and building, and so. But is it gonna be? It's not fully 3D, correct?
It is fully 3D in this case.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yes,
See,
I'd started off again. My first round of things was like with the first game, building the scenes in 3D and painting over them. Then I moved on to 2.5D, like Grim Fandango, with the old Resident Evil games with 2D backgrounds and 3D characters. But now we've just gone the whole hog when you added the whole dimension on.
oh, I see. Awesome. So is it? So is it? So how would the camera work in that game? Oh, you're talking about one too.
Well, it's kind of like well, there's a lot more of it. So much more of it is just camera choreography, and it's kind of something you don't expect when you move on to 3D. You don't realize how much is just going to be about putting the camera in the right place. Because actually, one thing I've been thinking of in terms of comparison, so the Technobabylon 1 with AGS and other adventures in AGS that I've made, it's kind of felt like building, shooting for theatre. There is a stage. It can, move left or right across it sometimes if people move that far, but it's sort of fixed scenes, as it were. And with
Right.
3D, it's become a lot more like trying to think in terms of television or film. But at least with Unity, the cameras are all imaginary, so we're not going to accidentally get a cameraman in view.
Yeah. It's definitely a different sort of setup. But that, yeah, I hadn't actually realized that. So, yeah, like I was thinking of like Resident. This is kind of a weird, but Resident Evil is that they just kind of jump from the first one. They jump from there's like a camera shot of like the mansion, and then it would jump. Basically, most of the cameras were stationary. Is that
Indeed,
kind of how you're doing it? Or no?
no. That's what they call 2.5D.
Oh, okay.
That was like run. That was like test two. I've got a couple of test versions of Technobabylon, and some of our earlier scenes in the game are still built from the reference models that would have been used in the 2.5D version. But yeah, Resident Evil, they use pre-rendered backgrounds and switch from. I mean the cameras were only there picking up the movement of the people, but yes, they were. The effect was instantaneous switch from camera to camera. This one, I might be being a bit ambitious. I'm trying to go for something more like Telltale. I mean, not like Batman Telltale, but earlier things, Sam & Max kind of thing.
Oh yeah, Seven Max. Yeah. I definitely remember that. Yeah. I kind of get that. And so it would still be uh, point and click adventure.
Yes. I Part of what I'm doing is trying not to alienate existing audiences. I know. Um, I so I was kind of going to go a bit retro with it. My plan was to go for something like 2002-ish Deus Ex kind of style, but with a point and click adventure sort of pedigree. Because when adventures like Grim Fandango moved on to direct keyboard controls and things, or people still, I think they're called like tank controls. People didn't like that. I never heard people saying good things about the controls for that kind of thing, or Resident Evil sort of controls. But point and click, people still, nobody really has any problems with Telltale Salmon Max, and for people who play Wajitai games, it's familiar. If people will use a mouse. It's the same kind of thing. Left click, interact, right click, look, inventory at the top. The usual.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's yeah, that makes sense because yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm actually doing this text. I don't quite understand what it is, but it's actually kind of a text group interview with a lot of different point and click folks, including Mark Yohalam and some I think Francisco Gonzalez, who I know you know. And they were talking about point and clicks and like questions that have been coming up. It's kind of like a weird discussion thing, but not in real time. So, but there's been a lot of I guess there's kind of like questions about what defines the point and click genre, or even like to me, I was kind of asking myself that like what is the point and click genre in 2018, or the way I think of it, right, is more like kind of like what like they're asking like what is the kind of like the Venn diagram or the circle, the red line that this is a point and click and that isn't. And the way I was kind of thinking of it is I think of it more in terms of like the semantics or the semiotics or the tags of it to a community. Like when you say point and click, I mean a lot of young people, they don't like if I say that to somebody and they're like a 18 or 20-year-old person, they might not even know what that means. They might like using mouse but to a certain community like the Sierra Lucas Arts 90s, like the Monkey Island fans and the all the Something Quest games, Space Quest and the King's, those people mostly, they're mostly, I would say, like Gen X age, maybe Zennial, but who kind of play those games, they kind of have a certain idea of what it is, and it involves inventories, it involves, clicking and solving puzzles, and and they really know, and there's a kind of a hardcore, smaller subset of the gaming culture, I would say, slightly more, I would say the nexus is somewhere transatlantic, possibly between Germany and Berlin and London, somewhere around there, based on the Steam reports. And today, they really, like, if they hear a point and click, they're like, oh my god, I got to get my hands on that. But to a lot of other people, they don't necessarily know. The wider gaming audience won't necessarily know. So I don't know, what do you think about that? I mean, we can kind of spin off more into what do you think about the point and clicks and the general indie game scene?
I think point and click is sort of it's a useful. I mean, yes, there are games that literally involve pointing and clicking, but I think essentially it also covers the kind of narrative adventure in which often it's not so dependent. It's not dependent on things like reflexes, coordination, or kind of like it's not skill based in the same way as, for example, a platform game. But I think that the term point and click is just one of those things that's been that's kind of held on since its inception back in the days when pointing and clicking was a novelty, when mice were shiny. But I personally, I mean, as I said, Telltale's Batman, you can play it entirely with a controller, but I would still count that as spiritually point and click. Granted, there's a lot less of the pick up item, combine items together, solve puzzles that way. It's more like a story is being told that the player has an involvement in, but I think it just about sticks in the point and click category rather than being a movie.
Right. yeah. Because some of the, like, what I would say, like, if you kind of have the point and click like word cloud, or like meme cloud or something nearby it, right? If point and click is the center, then you have adventure, straight, adventure, and then action adventure. But there's some differences there. Walking simulator or simulators generally have and have some similarities, but and then what else? Visual novels also, which is huge. I just looked at a recent thing that do some of the biggest selling games are actually visual novels, and there is actually a lot of overlap. I've even found like if I suggest that Near Feud has visual novel qualities, a whole lot of people, and it's a generally different demographic. I would say it's a lot younger, and it skews more to the east a lot of the time, but not necessarily. But they, if they hear, it might be something like obviously Near Feud has point and click. That's my game. It has some it is made in AGS. It's point and click, but it has a lot of dialogue and it has a lot of character sort of stuff. And then if they hear that, then it gives you a different idea of it, but people. So I've heard people even describe it as that, I'm sometimes I get confused. I'm like, which one? I don't even know what to say, but it kind of depends on who I'm talking to. But I don't know where I'm ranting now. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think like about the some of those other I don't know, categories of games and how it's different now compared to, I don't know, 20 years ago or something?
I think so visual novels, they kind of had a genesis on like the PC-80 and really old computers in Japan. If you've ever, I mean, not only endorsing people suggesting people go and visit 4chan, but the VR retro games page on it, they've got a lot about essentially visual novels from the 80s, and it's all very anime style, but you can kind of see it's like almost like a cousin of the old Sierra stuff from the way they're doing things with EGA palettes and being really creative. But I mean, if I'm being cynical, I'd say visual novel has more smut in it. But, I mean, the two I've got, actually, the two visual novels I've got are Steins Gate, because I like the anime series of that, and Psychopaths, because I mean, if anybody likes cyberpunk, I recommend Psychopaths, absolutely, whether the series or the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I've heard a lot about it. I haven't actually experienced it, but I hear that a lot. That comes up.
I mean, if anybody watches Psychopaths, they'll start recognizing things I might have taken inspiration from in Technobabylon.
You gotta make sure you airbrush cover up all your sources. But yeah. Because that question came up and I was like, I didn't really know how exactly to answer that, but but I mean, I do find it interesting how that is kind of, I guess it's visual analysis have always been there. They just gained prominence recently, and I would say maybe in a more global, like in Japan, they've always been pretty. They have a sizable following, right?
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those things that Steam has really helped out. Visual novels as such is, I mean, where would one go to get them before, except for schlepping over to Akihabara and picking it up yourself? And Steam is just giving so much more exposure to it, and I mean, GOG, I don't really think is a place to go to for them yet, but Worldwide Marketplace, that's I forgot what I was saying. It's very much, I think, because of a great deal more exposure in the last few years and easier to get hold of them, plus the availability in English. I mean, once you translate into English, you open up a huge market.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely interesting to have a global. The number of people that I've actually noticed, like this is one kind of a little bit frightening. I was like, the number of like Chinese people who have been buying. I'm just by watching the sales of buying. Like I would say like if you just. Somebody actually said you could play this if you're Chinese, but you need like 100 million points of English level to play. But I was like, this guy that is the most popular review, is actually a Chinese review, and there's like a ton of these players, and I was like, how are these people even? I don't have it translated into any languages. I can't afford to translate it. I kind of wanted to get it I don't have any official translations, and they're all, but it was like interesting, and their whole take on it, and takes from like people in different places, and I'm sure you've had that experience as well. But yeah, I mean, that's what do you think about that? Like the I don't want to say, well, not necessarily the rise of China, but this is like the increase in players on that side of the pond. I don't know if you've noticed that with your games.
Kind of. A lot of I think, aside from the usual suspects, the biggest non-English speaking market for Technobabylon has been Russia, to the extent that recently a bootlegged version with a Russian translation has come out. I say bootleg; it's sort of I'm kind of on board with it because they came to me for advice about the font, making Cyrillic characters for it. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting to get China's perspective on it because it again is a recent thing that there's a bit more science fiction coming out of China itself, which is an interesting new perspective on matters. It's different countries you're going to get. It's kind of a reflection on what a culture feels and fears and hopes for the future. Is very much a product of where it came from, and I'd be intrigued to see. I mean, if there were Chinese cyberpunk adventure games translated into English, my Mandarin is terrible. But, it would be fascinating to see more coming out of China as well, and I think it might need some more research into it, but getting into the Chinese market it's enormous, but there are issues like, for example, intellectual property in China and the official channels, things like censorship. If you want to get things published over there, there is a lot of red tape for that, and a lot of people in commercial game sales keep telling me that it's not profitable to translate into other languages. It's not sort of worth the time or investment. And I guess they've got more experience of it than I do, but I still know I'd like to get it out to a bigger audience if possible. One of my earlier games, I managed to get, it was the Perfidious Petrol Station. We managed to get a German translator on board for that, and I did Latin for the second translation of the game as well.
Oh, you did it yourself?
Just only the Latin one.
Oh, I see. I don't speak any. I took some language classes, but I can't translate to anything. But yeah, that's yeah, I do remember that game. That kind of has a slightly more anime style, doesn't it? Or am I?
I think it was kind of bits of it. I was maybe aiming a little bit anime, but 1992 pixel art. Yeah, like cross between anime and Day of the Tentacle. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting that you have the recall. That's interesting. They say that it wouldn't be profitable to translate. I've talked to a few folks, like the guy who does Screen 7, who produced Downfall and the Cat Lady, Mark Lovegrove.
Yes.
He said that translating to German was about he estimated 25 to 30% you could get the market, adventure game market. Germany is definitely a big market for adventure games.
Huge.
So yeah, but I don't know. I just found it could be particular to the specific game. I did find it interesting, the feedback that I got from the Chinese players of the game, because yeah, they do have a different perspective, and there are a lot more science fiction and even cyberpunk writers. There's a guy, I can't remember what his name is, but he's like the William Gibson of China. And I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, but he's like one of the most popular global writers, apparently, or one of the more popular global writers. It's hard to gauge reality now with the way the internet is warped and distorted by various mega corporations. Anyways, but yeah, it's an interesting scene. Yeah, but I don't know, on the cyberpunk side, I know, because we're both kind of cyberpunk sci-fi fans. What have you been thinking in terms of I don't know, in the last year since Blade Runner 2049, there has been like a whole lot of that kind of genre. Cyberpunk has basically been pretty mainstreamed, I would say. It's kind of pushing the limit. I I feel like if there's a few more superhero flops, the cyberpunk is going to start making the bulk of the money for Hollywood soon. Possibly, I don't know. But Altered Carbon. What else is there? There's just been a lot. Trying to think about. I can't even. Hotel Artemis was a smaller one that I recommended. I don't know if you got a chance to check it. Probably haven't been able to find it yet. But I really liked that one a lot. What else has there been? Well, obviously Ghost in the Shell was last year. Neuromancer is currently it's been moving. I talked to William Gibson in May when I was up in Canada, which was amazing. I had a hard time trying not to fangirl out during that interview, but he did say off the air some secrets. This is my favorite writer of all time, so it was a little trippy. It's a little kind of like having a weird acid trip daymare when I did an interview. But he did say that there is movement on that movie, so I'm hopeful for that. And also, The Peripheral has been optioned by Amazon, so that book.
Yeah, Amazon's making Snow Crash as well, I believe.
Yeah, and Snow Crash. So there's like a lot coming down the pipe. I don't know. You take any piece of that if you've seen Altered Carbon. You want to comment on any of those things?
I've just started the third book in the series, Woken Furies.
Oh, Woken Furies. I've actually read the entire. That's from the Takeshi Kovacs series. The Altered Carbon is the first. What have you thought about that?
It was. So I enjoyed. I think I enjoyed the book more than the series. I can see they probably had to adapt quite a bit for practicality's sake, but the book kind of felt like it had more thought to it. It does put a lot of thought into it. It's very much about it. They've got their central conceit of swapping bodies, and it does put a lot of clever ideas into what the results of it are, both in terms of society and what kind of practical problems for an individual it might lead to. So it's good. I mean, it's not new as such. It's 20 years old, Altered Carbon, but it's getting a lot more attention lately because of the series, I imagine. So I'm enjoying it. All of the TV series isn't necessarily hewing to the books very closely yet, as such, but the style of it, they know what they were going for cyberpunk, certainly.
Right. Yeah, it's the book is I remember reading it in like a Borders Books and Music, which is now defunct, bankrupt. In like 2000 and I want to say 2 or 3. It was like I remember just a college student, and that was one of the earlier cyberpunk after like Neuromancer and the Gibson's Bruce Sterling kind of honeymoon phase, and I was like, I need more of this stuff, and I was like, it's not like my body's, it's not like I'm using it. It's like my body's developed this massive cyberpunk deficiency. That was kind of my anyway. But it was a really there are some things that are kind of like the modern like if books are and sci-fi literature is kind of like 20 or 30 years ahead of wherever the cinema and the games are a lot of times. It's kind of it does feel a little bit retro, but although it is nice to kind of see these worlds fully realized, even with like things like even Ghost in the Shell. It was nice to have something. But Altered Carbon. I was gonna say Black Mirror. I don't know if we talked about that last time, but that's one of the more modern. I don't know if you watched that. Have you watched that Black Mirror?
I've watched the first I watched the first few series of it before it moved on to Netflix, and. I mean, some of it was absolutely fantastic dystopian cyberpunk stuff like 1 Million Merits, but others it was a bit like generic Twilight Zone kind of thing, and I mean you'd never get a prime minister to do that. But I mean I did politics for my degree, so. Undermine that a bit, but and there was also I think it was last year there was a series of I think it was one of the other channels tried to get on board with the Black Mirror sort of thing and made a series of Philip Dick adaptations of Philip Dick stories, which was
Electric Dreams.
Yeah, I think that was kind of trying to be Black Mirror-y, but I mean an awful lot of Philip Dick's stuff is all about what if reality isn't like real, man, because he was off his nut on LSD a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's yeah. A lot of the cyberpunk, a lot of the writers generally of that era were on many mind-altering substances. I mean, I mean, I often, I say like, I didn't say it to his face, but Neuromancer is like, is a kaleidoscopic, mushrooms, ayahuasca, acid trip. When he jacks into when he jacks into the Matrix, the descriptions, especially towards the end, is very hallucinatory. Let's put it that way, right? So there's a lot of inspiration. You have it's an inner space that you journey, toward when your synapses are firing on, more cylinders than they probably you need to be, and, which it works. It kind of like works in a lot of ways in a sense. And he describes it right. It's like cyberspace, a mass consensual hallucination enjoyed, or used daily by millions of legitimate operators. Blah blah blah. And there's something kind of to that. The Timothy Leary lineage, right? He's almost, if William Gibson is like the Godfather, Timothy Leary may be like the great grandfather or something, right? And I remember him saying like, I'm gonna stop that rant because I'm gonna go off into like a lot of wonkery. But anyway, yeah, I do find it interesting that cyberpunk is really coming back. There's some things that I'm like, it's a little. And I see this all the time. It gets really mainstreamed and then corporatized, and then they package it, they put it on the plastic lunchbox, and then it kind of gets watered down, and it's not as yeah, it's losing the punk. And I've said a lot of things about that, and I'm trying to recapture. I call it cyberpunk, and I like capitalize the punk now, and I like scream that in everyone's face. To try to recapture in the academic world, what do they call it? Recapturing your terminology. I can't remember, something like that. So because I feel like it's losing a lot of the punk side of things. So, and that's kind of my that's kind of more my personal thing, and it can get political. But then again, Cyberpunk 2077 has said that they said Cyberpunk is fundamentally political, and they're saying that they're going to bring that back. I don't know if you what do you think about that? What do you think about that statement?
Cyberpunk as a genre it's all about politics. It's about the perspective of the people at the bottom, their view of a society that is, as a result of the way technology has been harnessed and used, they are at the bottom of the pile, doing their best to survive by whatever means necessary. That's pretty much pure on the level of cyberpunk, and yeah, you've got to tell the stories of these people. If you're talking about invincible hero protagonist, not Snow Crash hero protagonist. That's different. But that's not punk anymore. That's just a narrative. That's a science fiction narrative rather than cyberpunk per se. But I am comfortable with using going on to post-cyberpunk, because a lot of what cyberpunk about, some people might argue, is fundamentally rooted in the 80s, and it not having changed as much since the 80s is perhaps maybe not such a great idea if it's not so reflective of the way society is anyway, because a lot of things that were far out futuristic things in cyberpunk fiction of the 80s is, we do it already. The internet, the hacking, corporate oppression and dystopia. That's what we have now.
Yeah.
But I think we might be able to better explore the implications of things in our situation at the moment by looking towards the future further on from now. And I think we have all kinds of new things. It's even the things that weren't predicted back then that are going to be revolutionizing how things are. We've got 3D printing is going to end up that was dang it, there was a book I read recently, and it struck me as very it sort of struck me as exactly, this is post cyberpunk / biopunk. If people asked me to point to an example of it, it's what I would say, but I've forgotten the name. Hang on, it's on my list here. Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. because it's kind of. Have you heard of it?
I know Annalie Newitz. She's the IO. She was on IO9, I think, and
That's-
I have no. Yeah, but I don't think I've read that book or yeah.
It's kind of so it's a lot more. It's punk because one of the protagonists is essentially an underground smuggler, but she's smuggling medications, pirated medications and chemicals, pirated from big pharmaceutical companies.
Oh yeah.
And it's all about. I mean, it's full of all kinds of things that are now they're the future. Everyone's 3D printing everything. The Arctic has melted, so everyone's plying trade on the Arctic Ocean. It's what I would. And one of the protagonists is a robot. So yeah.
There you go. Now it's cyberpunk. But that's something like I'm not like like Bruce Sterling is a cyberpunk nationalist, or I don't know, he was at one point. Now he might be. He was one of the original writers, Islands in the Net, etc. And but I'm not like. It's just kind of like point and click. I think of the terms as like they're useful and they mean things to certain people. Like ultimately it's just cyberpunk is 3 phonemes, right? It's 9 letters. It doesn't mean anything in itself, but it means something to the people that if I'm trying to convey what I'm trying to convey, I'm hoping that people that hear it, not when I say it, a lot of times it means kind of like Tokyo skyline with a pink and fuchsia filter on it or something, and I'm like. I guess, but to people in like a certain Discord servers on the internet, it means something. To people like in a Facebook group, and then to literary, to a PhD in history, and read a lot of Margaret Atwood and William Gibson. It means something very different, right? And to the literary print culture, it definitely means something very different. And I agree. Like, I don't really want to. I think of it either as like I want to update cyberpunk to the modern times, or just call it something different. I've been throwing around the term with. I try not to swear. I'm bankrupt now because I put $1 in a swear jar every time. I'm trying not to swear, and I'm already poor, and now I have like negative $1,000 in debt from the last week. So, but I call it the genre cyber the F word, cyberfuck. That's the genre of the game that I'm currently working on, and I might even call it near future. Might even call Terminus Cyberstar. That one is I call it cyberfucked because it really to emphasize that this is it's like you said, if it's just about superheroes and I don't know, United Nations counterterrorism agents with the entire government and the latest nanotechnology in their body, I think that's kind of post cyberpunk. I'm talking about Deus Ex, obviously. To the punk is something on a street level. So cyberfucked is like even less than that. You're like the immigrant, refugee, ex-con in the favela, drinking sewage, and your healthcare costs like $90,000, and it's out to kill you. Like the first mission of Terminus Cyberstar is universal death care. It's like try not to be killed by your healthcare system. That's the first mission. So so I don't know. That's my, and I don't know what to call that. It's like if I say cyberpunk, people be like, how come it doesn't have like it's gotta look like a Ghost in the Shell chick, and it's gotta have some guy with a a crazy arm, and it's gotta look like why is it in the daytime, and it's so to certain audiences I'll be like, yeah, this is cyberpunk. To the more literary audience, because it's dealing with those kind of what would the future and the spec, it's more fixed, what would the in contrast to kind of utopian or Star Trekian or space opera sci-fi, cyber, it's more like what would the actual future look like with techno, socio-political, all that human nature stuff thrown in there. I use the word cyberpunk to describe that, but so yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of like in between. I'm talking to the guy, the producer, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, man. We just cyber, we can call it whatever, but it's hard because
it's a way to sell it.
Yeah, it's a useful way to sell it to a certain crowd. I don't know.
I think for most people, using a different term like post-cyberpunk would probably be, not necessarily confusing or off-putting, but it doesn't have quite the immediate, mental image as cyberpunk. I mean, I think when a lot of people think cyberpunk, they will think of Blade Runners and Ghosts in the Shell and so on. So it's a good touchstone for it.
Yeah, I think for post cyberpunk, to people like I saw that term thrown around like a lot in, let's say, like the late '90s and 2000, like basically anything post snow. Some people say Snow Crash is already post cyberpunk. Anything after Snow Crash, a lot of people described in, like, I would say, like literary circles. Again, this is kind of hard to say because it's like, just like when you being on the internet on the planet and talking to people. But it seems like post '90s and then early '90s was kind of the post cyberpunk kind of heyday, and then people who, I don't know, yeah, I don't know, I know what you're trying to say. It just, and then now even over a decade, and now, like, 5 seconds can be a decade on Twitter, right? It's like it's sometimes the meaning of things can easily get disappeared, or what things meant 10 years ago have suddenly gathered new meanings. Like even I was just talking to people today about how the Matrix has gained meanings that, and I kind of, when I figured out what the certain terms meant, and I was like, what? Like it used to be kind of a movie about I don't know, I thought it was kind of like a liberation and such, but it's gained new meanings over time depending on how people use it, especially particularly on the internet. And anyway, but yeah, yeah, that's kind of so it is hard, it's hard thing to say, like where things are at, and I have a hard time even figuring out where things are at, what words even mean, what even are words. Sometimes you get on the in Twitter for 5 seconds, and I feel like this is just postmodern insanity. I don't even know what's happening. But yeah, anyway, from that philosophical thing, so I don't know. So what are some of the things you're looking forward to, or really games, or if you want to stay on the sci-fi topic, like, I don't know, what was something you're like, oh man, that is really like the direction we should be going in, either a movie or game or something, or a book. I know you just mentioned, I only knew it's his book, but is there anything else that is something you really would like to see more of?
In a way, I mean, I know it's definitely not the punk sort of thing, but I kind of want to see more optimistic stuff because, realistic or not, but I mean, even Technobabylon, I like to include a balance of things. Yes, there are ghastly things like, a restaurant serving cloned human and people with, ending up with virus in your brain, forcing you to work in a factory collective in China. But there are also the good things in the game, like, for example, gay marriage is simply not even vaguely an issue anymore.
Right.
But positive. I do like the idea of there being optimistic things going on, as yes, it's ghastly if there's a good point to illustrating when things in society are going absolutely ghastly wrong, but I do like the idea of there being positives here, at least here, and or in some kind of balance, at least. Ooh,
yeah.
Slight diversion when you were mentioning the Matrix there. So do you remember a couple of years ago they made a remake of Total Recall?
Yeah, with Colin Farrell. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah. So it struck me that so the Matrix is now 20 years old. Total Recall was 20 years old when its remake was made.
Oh yeah.
So how long until they make the Rematrix?
There you go. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, like, it would be the time. It would be the time for it if they could get all the rights and everyone together to do it. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, that is an interesting point. It did take Blade Runner 33 years or 30 years, right? So we have to wait till 2027 or so, or 20, but yeah. I mean, I would love to see that. But I do agree with your thing. Your point on the excessive. I've been saying recently, like, I feel like, this I feel like the 2020 election is going to destroy the plots of so many dystopian fiction novels. Every day Charles Stross is going to be like, oh my god, you have made me rewrite 6 chapters because of something that happened today. And it's just like, it is hard because, like, we're living in, like we said, we're living in a cyberpunk dystopia, so it's not actually that futuristic, right, to be talking about all these things. And so and yeah, it's like, how much. Yeah, I do agree with that, which is why as I've been working on the things that I'm currently working on, I've been really thinking about it in terms of like there's a place for solar punk sort of stuff, and that kind of like, this is a way that things could this is a future that could be better than the future, one of the 20 apocalyptic futures that we're on right now. This is one that's better, and that there's a place for that. And the way that I'm kind of dealing with it is kind of like, it is a cyberpunk, it is a dystopian world in the one that I'm spending a lot of time working on, is the Terminator Cyberstar, which is a Deus Ex one, like immersive sim RPG, and that is it's a really dark world. It's really not good. Like I just mentioned a few things that are really horrible about it. And it is in interstellar space, so it's more like altered carbon with a multi-planetary galactic colonization. And it's kind of a satire of like Star Trek's all the space and sci-fi, and also anyway. But yeah, it's kind of I try to balance it by having more. The world sucks, but the characters are not that nihilistic, kind of like, I don't care about anyone. It's kind of like the greed is good of Gordon Gekko, or the, what would say, like the hyper capitalist neoliberal kind of a Mark Thatcher Reagan agenda thing, which kind of got normal in a certain sense. William Gibson, I feel like, in the cyberpunk was trying to be a criticism of that by saying, look how horrible, it's a cautionary tale. Like, if we just only made everything was about the market, everyone is just individuals competing against each other to survive, and selling off their organs. That's part of the whole Black Clinic thing, right? I felt like, that sucks, right? Everyone is just criminals. Kamali is a ex. She was abused, had to sell her body, and now is just like fighting for her life. And Case is just like some messed up drug addict criminal who has no friends and is totally suicidal and trying to kill himself doing deal like that. That sucks. Like, that's not actually if you actually have to live in that reality. Like, and I was a social worker for people who lived in that reality. That sucks. And that's kind of the point. Like, we wouldn't want to. It's like, it's like some bored researcher pushed was doing a Darwinian social experiment. Button. Yeah, it's like he had his finger permanently on the fast forward button. It's like, that's not a good world to live in, right? But everybody took it as like, not everyone, but a lot of the fans were like, yeah, man, I just want to go to like Tokyo and like go to Brazil and some shithole and like sit under the neon light and have the copper wire stolen so I can't even do my Discord. It's just like, that's not fun, man. People living in dystopia, in actual real world dystopias all over the planet right now, like across the in ghettos in the United States, and increasingly the entire United States is a giant ghetto, and Brazil, anywhere there's poverty, you go to any U.S. imperial war zone, Afghanistan, Iraq, it's not fun to live in those places, but everyone is still kind of glamorizing that concept of, it's just kind of, but I'm gonna win, right? We're in Hunger Games and everyone's screwed, but I'm gonna win it because I am so badass. I have a giant Gatling gun for an arm, and I got cyber jacks, and I'm gonna like win the lottery and go to space, capitalist heaven in the Villa Straylight or some shit. And that kind of concept. Anyway, so that's a really long rant to say. So the characters in Terminator Cyberstar are gonna be, they're cyberpunks, but it's more about kind of like discovering how just trying to be some kind of cyber gangster street samurai is a waste of that's what's killing everyone, is everyone thinking that we're gonna buy into this kind of capitalist ideal. And that's what America is. Everybody's just tricked into believing that they're gonna make it when everyone is starving and doing GoFundMe for their freaking insulin. And so and then coming to so then the actual protagonists are like, or not that protagonists, but there's alternate groups who are actually resisting. They're going like, hey, maybe this having universal healthcare might be a good idea. Having like minimum wage, maybe like having like actual the organizing and protesting and doing actual, I don't know, journalism, like that's something that's kind of abandoned in this country. That's actually something that we should be fighting for. Not everyone just trying to like, shoot a bunch of laser ninja stars at each other and make $1 billion selling weapons, cyber military industrial complex weapons. So anyway, that's kind of, so the hope is that like, is that people will stop. The world sucks, but don't just be like a selfish asshole in it. Kind of like, I don't know, that's a really long way to say that's how I'm trying to not be totally pessimistic, or I don't know, something.
Good.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a long thing, but yeah. But anyway, what else is there? But yeah, Deus Ex. I don't know. I know we're both fans of Deus Ex, so I don't know. what Warren Spector is currently working on System Shock 3. I don't know if you heard about that. He's the guy who created Deus Ex. I don't know if you played that game or you know about that or.
Have I played Deus Ex? Yes. So, yeah, System Shock 2 is one of my favorites. Absolutely. It was. I think it's probably the first game I played where proper scares, proper fear was a thing in there. And this was before the high definition patch and everything.
Yeah.
It's absolute. I mean, I tried playing it on co-op a couple of months ago, and it does somewhat lose some of its tension when you've got 4 of you, and essentially then it becomes a fight for who gets the 3 bullets the body had. Everyone's running around with wrenches. It becomes a lot less chilling.
Oh yeah. That was It was a really one weird overlap with Resident Evil. It's a very horror, scary. With those hybrids are freak. I had to stop. I actually stopped playing it when I first played it. Because that hybrid when he first comes out and he's like, "Oh, the money," and he's with I actually had to stop playing. It scared the crap out of me. And because really the controls are a little bit. When you first start out, it's a little bit laggy, so you're like trying to not get killed by this creepy guy with a worm growing out of his head, and it's like, that was really trippy. Well, I can imagine that the fear aspect would, that chillingness would kind of drop, when you have a bunch of people. I didn't even know you could play co-op System Shock 2. I gotta get in this.
Yes, indeed. The GOG version. We should arrange something with people on the internet. See if anyone on Twitter wants to join in a huge co-op game.
There you go. Yeah, I'll be down. I just started looking into it. I also didn't realize you could play Deus Ex in co-op, and there's a whole server full of people doing that.
I never saw the mod for that. Last time I checked, it only worked on Liberty Island. But if it works any of the rest of it, that'd be interesting to push further through with.
Yeah, I just saw a bunch. It's there's a Discord server. I don't know if it's public, but I just saw people playing all over the whole game. I think, and there's at least 4 players in it. I saw like a live stream of it recently. So, but definitely System Shock 2 and Deus Ex. Those are 2 Warren Spector games. For people who are listening, they don't know what we're talking about when we're going into deep cyberpunk nerdness. But yeah, System Shock 2 and Deus Ex are both by Warren Spector, and some big. I'll stop talking about Warren Spector. But we are gonna have our lead the programmer on our thing does actually works with, or he is a colleague with someone from Origin, and we're gonna get Warren Spector to have a little sit down and talk. So, if you could ask Warren Spector to make anything or do anything, what would you? I mean, I don't want to put you on a spot, but what would you most want to see from him, other than System Shock 3, because he's already doing that?
Gosh. Well, if not a new idea, then I'd say possibly. I don't know. Deus Ex doesn't really need a remake, but I think getting his involvement in a future Deus Ex project would be a lovely idea. The kind of thing would be worthwhile. Though I don't know how much Eidos Montreal would be on board with it. I'm not even sure if they're planning on making another one. Even Elias Tufexis, who played Adam Jensen, isn't sure about it. So
that was kind of unfortunate that one of the last ones for whatever reason it didn't do as well as some people would have hoped, and that it's kind of been somewhat on hiatus. I did see Warren Spector did say that he loves the world of Deus Ex and he would be happy to come back to it. He said, but don't hold your breath, probably because of all the things that would have to come together for that to happen. But yeah, I do think that it is difficult on the, and I talk about this stuff a lot. It's the bigger the production gets, right? When you get into the $50 and $100 million plus scale, it becomes it's hard to keep the spirit. Like Warren Spector said, like the biggest team he ever worked on was Epic Mickey, and it was 800 people, and it's hard to keep your the idea and the passion and the vision when you have that scope of things.
Yeah, it feels less like it's your project or a personal project. You get less of the author influence through it. Unlike so near Feud or Technobabylon, where you can count the people working on it on your hands.
Yeah, exactly, and it's part of it is just because of the number of people, and I think sometimes it's just the external influence of the money that needs to be made because of the money that's been invested into it changes the entire organization of the workflow. It gets directed more and more externally and less internally, and you have less say. Particularly, like William Gibson even said, like when Johnny Mnemonic was made. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but yeah, he's like there was actually we talked more about this off camera. There's more kind of behind the scenes shop talk because but there's basically it was designed to be a comedy initially. Johnny Mnemonic and he and Keanu Reeves, because Keanu Reeves had just filmed Bill and Ted, and the director was really on board with this whole kind of more satirical sort of thing. And then they filmed it, and then at the end, other people came in and they said, Keanu Reeves is just in Speed, and now we need this to be an action movie, and it needs to be really straight up action movie. And it was like, oh, and then we had to recut the whole thing, and it kind of wasn't what was intended, and that is part of why I think he said, like, that's part of why the reception of the movie hasn't been as good as it could have been if it was the original vision. So there's one definite instance where the vision was totally altered because of I can't want to name names, but other individuals came in and said, no. He's the heartthrob now, and he needs to be, he's doing Sandra Bullock. Speed was one of the biggest movies of the 90s, and anyways, but yeah, I would definitely love to see another. I'll take any Deus Ex, right? I mean, I think I'll play any Deus Ex.
Absolutely. In fact, not necessarily a game project. But it would be interesting to see Warren Spector working on a Deus Ex film or miniseries.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, one could probably adapt the plot of Deus Ex. Miniseries is probably a better idea than a movie. You're not going to get that into 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is on that same kind of thread, but in the horror genre, like Ash vs. Evil Dead was a TV series that was created. The originals were movies in the 90s and 80s and 90s, but Sam Raimi, who directed it, and this is another total like low budget. The first one was like the first several were just total really shoestring budget sort of affairs, and there's a huge fan base, and they were like, we really want you to make another one, and he said, I will do it, but I really don't want. They wanted to make a $200 million movie, right? Of that, and it, it's the same kind of thing. It's like it's not gonna. He said he actually said that. He said it will lose the spirit. You can have an Ash vs. Evil Dead movie, but it will just be something with a lot of really amazing CG and some really really big name, like I don't know, Dwayne Johnson or something, and it's gonna not be what you want it to be. So why don't we try a TV series, and then you have to shop it around. And yeah, I really think that, because the TV series, it's kind of like you do have, you can have some production value, but then you can also have, like, I don't know, the vision can kind of be maintained because of, I don't know, there's just a lot of factors into it. And like the late noughties and early teens were, kind of the golden age of what do you call it? Prestige TV is one way they call it. Like, I don't know, Battlestar was one of the best sci-fi ones of that kind of era. Battlestar Galactica, Breaking Bad, obviously, and that kind of stuff. And there still is some of that. So I think, like, yeah, I would be really happy to see a Deus Ex TV series if they could get Elias in there to who would, I don't even know who played the voice of JC Denton, but it might have to be Adam Jensen. I don't know.
Oh, I know this one. He was J. Anthony Frank was J.C. Denton. He was darn it, I knew this one. And the only other thing I can think of he was in was Daikatana and Invisible War.
Oh, yeah. Right. Daikatana.
Also another classic of sci-fi cyberpunk gaming,
Yeah. Don't say that. No. Everyone's gonna think that we suck. But yeah, he's the voice actress for Shodan is coming back for System Shock 3. I know that. And I can't remember what her. She's actually she was like a band Terry something. I can't remember what her name is. But yeah, she's coming back for System Shock 3. So that hello insect voice.
Look at
When
you,
the glory.
hacker, a pathetic creature of meat and bone.
Yeah, exactly. I can't. Yeah, there you go. That's the thing of I had a lot of nightmares involving that voice and like running, trying to forgetting your homework and like pathetic insect. You will fail on your exam like the meat sack you are. Yeah, that was that's gonna be a lot of fun when that comes back. I'll be really happy for that for that. Yeah, yeah, but System Shock. What else is happening? I had a list here.
Oh, there's another. Winding back a bit to Ghost in the Shell, they're making another series. The people who did Standalone Complex making another series of it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And it's an anime series.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That the last one was Arise, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Arise wasn't bad. It was very modern, but this one's going to be a direct continuation from Standalone Complex.
Right,
So-
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was my favorite. I think Standalone Complex was like, other than maybe the original movie, was my favorite. Standalone Complex. It had like the most intricate and it had the most like the deepest, most fleshed out plot and world and background to it. I feel like, and it was kind of like a complete tale. Obviously, the movie was great, right? There's only so much you can do in an hour and 90 minutes or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know. What was your favorite Ghost in the Shell?
Standalone Complex, without a doubt. I think probably. Oh, I can't remember the first or second series. Yeah, Standalone Complex is my favourite one, and the movie, the animated movie. I mean, it's a work. I mean, there was literally a museum in London recently had parts of it up on the wall as art. Then the concept art and everything at the V&A Museum, Victoria and Albert. Because it is the kind of thing that people are, on reflect, people are looking back at as art, and it is a beautiful movie.
Oh yeah.
But story-wise, Standalone Complex, they just got so many issues and ideas into it. It's thoughtful, and I mean, going back to our other topic, it's one of those things that, yes, it's cyberpunk, but it's not one of those ghastly, terrible worlds. It's sort of everyone's going about things as normal. Yes, there are shady people and criminals working to exploit others, but they're in a world of sort of balance-ish.
Yeah. I would say Technobabylon definitely struck me as closest to Ghost in the Shell's world. Obviously the protagonists are law enforcement, right? It's who is it? They're cell agents, right? Which is cell agents, so they're kind of like police / FBI.
Ish. I was kind of going for cell as a euphemism, so rather than raising the language of police, law, order, it's about emergency logistics. It's not about control and scrutiny of the population. It's things, it's people think centralized emergency logistics. Things have gone wrong. These are the people who come out to help. So broadly, it also covers everything like fire and rescue and ambulance support. It's just so CEL as a law enforcement organization, the front line of it is designed to be public facing, friendly, glorified tour guides, and they only bring in the big guns if something has gone severely wrong, or it's something they need to keep really quiet.
Huh. Yeah. That's actually kind of utopian now that I think of it. I mean, compared to what we have in the United States, for sure.
So the question that raises is it utopian because their goal, nobody sees that things are wrong? Is that utopian because people are happy, or dystopian because the government is covering all of these things up that's going on right under their noses?
Yeah. It's just it's the friendly face of fascism. Who knows?
That's a problem we're getting in the UK. People in London, it's such people are still thinking, we've got green parks. It's still pretty clean. It's a nice place to live. Yeah, it's a bit expensive, but it's actually it's safer than it's ever been in the UK. But we also have unmatched levels of corruption at the moment. So positive experiences of it um, aren't necessarily indicative of things going well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's something that like is yeah, that's something that it's really hard to describe those sort of things if in a science fiction or in a speculative fiction or in fiction or in nonfiction. Sometimes even, but yeah, it's like I mean, just some of the for where I'm from, there are huge homeless villages in Honolulu. Like I worked in several of them, and there were like thousands of people, just tent cities. And I've had to leave that island because the rent is like $2,000 for that one bedroom apartments. That's like almost my entire salary. So that's why I was working two jobs on Oahu, and I was teaching at a public school full time, and then working another job was insufficient to not be homeless on Oahu. And now it's more. But I noticed the last time I went back there, all those homeless kids that I was working with, and the immigrants and the people of color, just everywhere in the streets, packed into like 40 of them in a house. You don't see them on the street anymore. And I was like, where are they putting these people, right? And I noticed a lot of it is happening in they push them out into places where none of the tourists go. They push them into places where none of the rich people have to see them. They build there's a lot more houses that look nice. But then they're just like people are just living like literally like they're like living like sardines. Like there's like a coffin, and this is kind of how we live. We live in a closet when we were my family. We all lived in like my parents like a 10 by 10 box while I was finishing parts of Neophyte, and so yeah, it's like it looks fine when you fly in and you're like sipping your mai tais. You go to the hotel, you can lie on the beach, walk around, go to the nice resort, go on a cruise, and never see any of that actual dystopia. It's they've done a very good job of completely kind of airbrushing or hiding or just masking the insane levels of inequality and just oppression that's just rampant there. And I noticed that more and more everywhere. So yeah, that's something that it's like So I don't know. That's that kind of masking the malfeasance or sweeping everything under the rug. It's becoming I don't know where that. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of places that we could take that.
When my family used to live in Rio de Janeiro a few years back, and as you mentioned, it's the shanty towns. Rio is famous for its favelas, its shanty towns.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things people would we would sometimes host visitors coming over to the country, and one of the things people would do is they'd take tour buses of the shanty towns, and it just.
Oh. What that's this is unrelated, but I mean that's kind of the thing. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to see this cyberpunk dystopia called the Brazilian favela? It's like, I don't know, right? It's that's a part of that disturbs me about some of the fan base. It's like you thought that was cool to like live in a box and like have people like come and steal. I mean, first of all, they have to like. I know actually one of our developers on Terminus Cyberstar he is Brazilian, and he lives. We're working right, and he's doing like level design, and he's like, oh sorry guys, I couldn't work for the last 2 days because somebody stole my laptop and the copper wire that my internet comes through. And we were like, holy shit. So he's like, it's in Brazil. Yeah, we have the highest murder rate in the world, and there's insane levels of inequality, and so I told him like, and his name is Ben Hur, which is interesting. Ben, I told Ben, all the ideas that I just go outside of your front door and look down the street. What does it look like? Okay, now I need you to make that, because we're making an area that's basically like a shanty town. It's like similar to the Neophyte's slum sprawl. Just look at what your surroundings are like, right? With the people just just like spaghetti wires all over the electrical towers, just siphoning electricity, and then people stealing electrical copper, and just people parked there's like cars parked on the sidewalk in people's yards, just like everything's just falling apart. Just make that and just look at that and put that into the game, because that will be better than any science fiction writer will ever be able to visualize. And because before that, it's kind of, that's one thing that I don't like. That's kind of the thing I don't like in the sci-fi, and that's what I try to tell everybody who's working on this game. It's like I want it to be grounded like in reality. I want this to. And Warren Spector also said this, right? Everything is based on actual white papers of science, and the events are based on actual political and or some actual conspiracy theories and what actual people actually think. Because there's a lot of that stuff that you'll never be able to invent. And if you just sit around trying to imagine something cool, that's when you just get kind of these like, cyborg, random generic cyborg ninjas shooting blades and like superheroes and purple capes. And I mean, nothing wrong with purple capes, but anyway, that's kind of a long rant.
Something of the feeling of the story.
yeah, you're losing the feeling. You're losing the real characters. Like everything in Newfield is based on people that I actually know. Like they're actual war, veterans who had their legs shot off, who I was working with, and could barely keep their heads. And they're all hippie, nice guys, but couldn't keep their heads straight. And there's a lot. The kids were all they all wanted to be Ice Cube, and they're all wanted to be gangsters, but they're living in, and they're all playing that game, right? They're playing the 80s, I'm gonna be Ice Cube, make $1 million, have movie deals, be famous, be a rap star, and meanwhile everyone's sometimes literally killing each other, sometimes just like ripping each other off, just getting, and then they all get locked up and they have to make freaking furniture for $1 an hour, or put out California wildfires for $1 an hour or something, and it's just like you're killing yourself. And I don't know. It's another long rant to say that I wish that more cyberpunk would really, or I would wish that more just games and movies and everything would just take the reality more seriously, and just depict what is there, not kind of what you want to be there, because that's the only way that people can actually I just lost it. But it's like the part of the propaganda why nothing changes, right? 80% of America wants universal healthcare. 80% thinks, everybody knows 90% is all screwed. 60% is in poverty. Half the children are in poverty. Nobody can. 60% of the population can't afford the cheapest new car. And everybody thinks though that they're alone in that, right? Like I'm the only. I screwed up, right? I didn't work hard enough. I didn't get enough degrees. I didn't try hard enough at the job interviews, even though I got rejected 500 times. I didn't do enough, and so, and I'm alone in that, and I'm bad, and I didn't compete hard enough, and I'm lazy. That's why I have to go fund me my insulin. That's why I'm in bankrupt. Or my kid has to pay $200,000 for college. It's my fault, right? But it's like you have to just if people, and then they watch these movies that are about people who are really successful. That's a mythology. Nobody who's 30 years old is owning their own house. That's insanity. And so if people actually said, holy crap, the world actually looks like Elysium. It looks like District 9. It looks like, Deus Ex with all the homeless people. It looks like, Neuromancer. Everyone is living in that. And that's reality. Then everyone would be like, oh yeah, maybe we should demand more from people running this insane, psychotic, dystopian show. Anyway, that's like a really long rant to say. That's kind of like my longer view of like, generally, that's why I don't really like superhero stuff, and I don't really like this, like I like I like space and science fictional stuff, but I don't like when it just kind of brushes over the rest of it. Yeah, just kind of like, just look at the general who graduated and he's commanding Starfleet, and forget about the rest of the planet that's all homeless, right? I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna stop ranting now. Yeah. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. I don't know how I know UK is different. I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe I'm losing my mind, but I see what you post on Twitter. I take it that the UK isn't doing like amazingly, swimmingly well comparative to the US.
Well, the issue we've got is a lot of it is an issue with. Partly it's an issue of the media and who controls it and their links to government. Because until a few years ago, the UK had a really good rating um, in terms of corruption. It was really good at dealing with corruption, and then we ended up with a Conservative government. And the problem is, their approach to things has essentially been, I guess, kind of like the Trump approach of enriching people. Because in 2008, the top 10% of the population of the UK, their wealth totaled about 240 billion pounds. Now it's 724 billion pounds. That is since 2008, since the Conservatives took over. Their goal, they claimed their goal was to manage the UK's finances to prevent austerity, to prevent economic damage by using a policy of what's called austerity. Cutting corners, cutting costs. But what it is, the result is the enrichment of their pals with whom they went to school. It's it's why I went and joined the Liberal Democrat Party rather than the Conservative. I grew up at boarding schools. I grew up with the kind of people who are now. I grew up with the kind of people who are literal members of Parliament for the Conservative Party. Some of them, but I could not, in good conscience, go up. And the problem with the Labour Party at the moment as well is that they're going right along with them. The issue what the Labour Party are trying to do is ensure that the Conservatives kamikaze nosedive in their latest policy, their latest plans, so that Labour can end up seizing control of the government for the next 20 years or so. And short-term practical goals, you can see, okay, I can understand why they're doing that. But the problem is, it will cost so many people so much, their livelihoods, their homes, their security. Sorry.
Yeah.
But politics is a bit of a.
Aren't you glad you got your degree in it?
My degree was most of it was about terrorism, and that's nice and straightforward compared to the.
Well, terrorism is straightforward to your local politics. Then something might be wrong.
Terrorism is arguably an expression, a small-scale, direct expression of politics. And there's the old aphorism that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. There are all kinds of problems with that statement, really. Terrorism is about using fear as a political motivator, but.
What was that quote from the NSF leader? Something like, when I can't remember. He's like, that's basically when the state and corporations get together to basically crush everyone. That's real terror.
That's terror. Corporations are so big you don't even know what you're working for. That's terror. Terror built into the system.
Yeah, there you go.
Ever wonder why big car corporations pay 2% tax and the guys on the assembly line pay 40%?
There you go. And people say, and people are like, oh, don't make it political. I mean, like Deus Ex, it's right there. It's right there. It's in the first mission, and you basically, the NSF leader has it right in your face. I mean, that's one of the some of the most quoted, most referred to speeches or dialogue in that entire game is that. And the talk with the leader there, and it's really the same. It's the same thing. It's really the same thing that I feel like that was, in Neuromancer and the original Cyberpunk in its own way was criticizing that same thing that's happened, which is corporations and government and the elite or the ultra rich, whoever you want to call them, have taken all the power, and the regular people don't have any power. Or basically, it's become anti-democratic, faux democracy, right? In a lot of cases, certainly here, and I feel like that's the kind of the core message. I mean, that's a lot of the punk. If punk is a resistance to if punk is a resistance to oppression by a small, asymmetrically small power against an overwhelming force, like, I don't know, a massive fascist government, or an authoritarian dictator, or just insane bonkers corporations and capitalism run amok and just find mega banks running everything or whatever it is. It's about it's about that resistance of regular people. I mean, they could be um, protesters or somebody in a show. I mean, the Mohawks isn't really what matters. And some people would argue. Like, I actually recently interviewed somebody. Her name was I didn't interview, but I played the game called Cyberpunk Forever, Cyberpunk 1870, which is about. I don't know if you heard of this game, Cyberpunk 1870.
I have not. No.
Oh, it's called 1870 Cyberpunk Forever, and it's how like indigenous struggles and struggles of people of color in the United States have always been. That was the original, not the original, but that was the spirit of punk is just borrowing from that earlier struggle throughout the 19th. Throughout many centuries, and 1870 is a kind of a weird, kind of a spinning the entire cyberpunk thing into there's kind of the city that had this great civilization, and now it's kind of collapsing. And one of the guys comes out, and there's cyberpunk. There's people in these kind of smaller. It's like a smaller native indigenous community who have implants and they have cybernetic. They have like advanced technology. But they are not like destroying the entire planet and like causing the extinction of all life on Earth. Like in the next after 2030, what's already happening? And he's trying to find out like this character from the city, right, is coming out to this indigenous cyberpunk community, and it's an interesting. It's only a 20-minute game. It's really short. It's like a narrative game. It's free, and but it really struck me because it was like it is true that like there's an actual much longer tradition and like an anti-colonial. There's been like an anti imperialism and resistance of people of color and indigenous people over time that kind of merged into and a lot of it went along with the punk movement, and that's part of I think that's a little bit why using like Shadowrun, and it refers a lot to like indigenous communities in kind of a weird way. Sometimes it's appropriative, but anyways, that's kind of a long way. I think there is a longer tradition of punk, and even today, like it lives on in other places. And it doesn't always look like look with the spikes and look like Sid Vicious. It doesn't always have the sleeveless jean jackets, but and you might not even call it punk, but it's just that I don't know. There's something still there, and I think that young people, even the solar punk. And there's like solar punk, solar goth. There's all kind of genres now, and the flame is always there, and people can take it up anywhere at any time. Like even I don't know if you ever heard of Pussy Riot? You heard of this group
in Moscow?
Yeah, in Moscow. Like like that. I feel like that obviously that was they did a show that really upset certain leaders and went to prison and and I feel like. Similarly, I mean, whatever you think about whether their statement was true or false, or if there whatever happened, it was an attempt, right, to stand up to a larger, overwhelming force by a smaller, just regular people. So anyway, I'll stop with that. I should probably talk about more games, unless going on the things, but yeah. I don't know what unless you want to talk about something else. What's your favorite? Not favorite. I already asked you your favorite. I don't know what. Okay, I don't know. Other than games and movies, because we kind of cover a lot of that territory. And you talked a little bit about the books. Or maybe are there any other books? I know you mentioned. I think Autonomous is one. Are there any other books that would be worth a read?
One other one I'd recommend to people, it's not quite cyberpunk, but arguably it's one of the good examples of biopunk, is The Windup Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. It was recommended to me by Ivan Yulinov, who was the portrait artist on Technobabylon and a lot of Logitized games. It's sort of set in a future of Bangkok, where environmental catastrophe has ruined the earth. A lot of plant and animal life is extinct, and humans are on the brink of starvation all the time. But genetic engineering leads to all kinds of new things to try and combat these plagues, whether natural or man-made. it's kind of a story of espionage and intrigue. But with an almost Victorian kind of feel to it, because everything is steam powered or hand driven or driven by elephants or genetically engineered elephant-ish analogs. It's such a beautifully rendered view. I mean, I've been to Thailand a few times. It's such a different environment for a story like this. It's something I tried to do with Technobabylon as well, is by setting it in East Africa. But when people think type of sort of science fiction, cyberpunk, you don't necessarily think Victorian Bangkok, as it were. But it's a fantastic story. And yes, it's a disastrous situation the world's in, but at an individual level, as you mentioned, it's not about not everyone is being ghastly to each other. One of the protagonists, he's a company man working for his employers overseas in a kind of industrial espionage capacity, but the way he behaves throughout, you can kind of see he's not evil. He's just there because that's his job. But yeah, it's a fantastic story. I'd recommend it to anyone generally.
Yeah, I did actually read the Windup Girl. It's on 2000. It was like 2008 or 9, or it was late '90s. Yeah, I remember that was one book that's like I kind of had that. I was like, I gotta read something that's like at the level of like the original cyberpunk. And then that was one book, and I read that. I was like, yeah, this definitely captures kind of the experience of it captured for me like reading Gibson. It was actually the quotes on the blurbs on the back were like, it's like reading Gibson again for the first time. It definitely has, in terms of like the it's a whole new novel world that's been, I mean, really hadn't been touched before that kind of some people call it like foodie punk, even or it has a lot to do with food systems, nature, and the environment. And it really, during the time when that was really becoming a concern, right? Where does your food come from, right? Who was exploited? What animals, were hurt? What, when Monsanto and kind of a lot of the questions around ethicalness of producing food was a big concern around the time. So it was a really well timed release, and I think Paolo Bacigalupi kind of said, yeah, and it was just kind of lucky that happened. And but yeah, it was an amazing world. The springs and the cranks of everything, because of this. I found that really, really interesting, and the politics of it was really, really intricately done. That Hawk Seng was the guy, I think. The China, he was like I can't remember he was Chinese, right? Working in Thailand, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the guy working for the American.
Right, working for the American. And so the way that all played out was, everything about it was just like really interesting. And the way that the global financial or corporate structures worked, and down to the local politics and the local economies and stuff. Everything about it was really, really well done. I mean, it was very very dystopian, definitely. A lot of bad things happened to a lot of people, but yeah, and I've read more than was it The Water Knife? He has several books. He has a lot of really interesting books. A lot of them are very, very telling. A lot of them deal with environment and water. It's just really kind of big right now. I just recently read that what was it? Harvard bought up 39 billion or 39 million or 39. So Harvard just like bought a ton of water rights in California. Expecting that they'll be able to make a lot of money when there's water shortages, as fracking and climate change causes mass desertification and water shortages there. They're already betting on that. And there was a story by him. It was exactly about that. I can't remember which one it was. It was water, something shipbreaker or water. It was something about water. And I read it and I was like, oh my god, it was exactly that, and it's happening like right now. But yeah. I don't know what genre that is. Like steampunk is generally like in the past, but
It's kind of a. I'd almost say biopunk because a lot of technology, the molecular springs are built on proteins as well. They grow them in plants. So that's why I'd be arguing biopunk on it. But so much of it, I mean, it felt so. I mean, Paolo Bacigalupi, he's not Asian, but I've married into a Sri Lankan family, and I know I've been to Thailand a few times. I've lived in Asia. It feels very, very Asian as a story. He understands how things are done there.
Yeah. Yeah, that I was actually kind of amazed, like how he got in the rituals, like even their prayers, like the ancestral, yeah, this is the way everything is done. It's very rich. That's what it is. Like really, the way that I would say Neuromancer's the Night City and Chiba. It's very rich with global cultures, and layer upon layer upon layer of the local culture with all the immigration and the expatriates from everywhere. I think there's a good deal of that also in Windup Girl. People like he's an American working for a agro giant, right? I think one of the characters is that, right? And then there's a Chinese expatriate in Thailand, and there's all these other interests, global and local gang, mobs, and there's the guys with the machetes that are coming. I can't remember where exactly it was, but I remember there's just all the groups, and Deus Ex that's another thing that Deus Ex really had too, right? It's like all the different peoples and interests and accents and everybody kind of and pop culture like splattered all over that is kind of that kind of like that's kind of like the disorienting present kind of feeling, and it's not really like in a lot of the something dash punk genre that's not really explained to you, like where it would be like, here we have the science fiction apple, it's like an apple but it's shaped like a pear and it's green because it's from the planet something gone. And it's not explained to you. It's just like, you looked at the sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel, or and then the something Windup girl sat on the spring and the 50-ton mastodon or whatever, and it's like, what the hell am I reading, right? And it's kind of this disorienting. But then
after a while, you get the hang of what these things are because you've been reading about what they're doing and the context they're used.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I did like that. I did like that book. I don't know if it's really positive. It's obviously not utopia. It's not as yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many people die in it.
A lot of people die in it.
But it's people are adapting to the situation, and they're through hardship they are overcoming eventually. Is how I like to look at it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I guess in that sense it is. I guess that's a little similar to what I would like to go for. It's like people somehow surviving the impossible circumstances. The Windup Girl circumstances in the book is pretty nasty. And somehow surviving it and not just surviving it to make $50 million and retire to somewhere in the Caymans, right? Surviving it and I don't know, having some aspect of your soul. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's weird how that how it has. Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. Sometimes I think some cyberpunk is very adolescent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sort of rather than being wish fulfillment cyberpunk, it's yeah.
Yeah, and I would hope to. That's what I kind of think of myself as kind of like I'm not any big voice, but I'm kind of like the chairman of helping cyberpunk to grow up or something. I don't know, or just make it less about the things that it's currently associated with. Anyways, yeah. So, let's see, what time is it? Oh yeah, it's getting late. But yeah. So Technobabylon 2, no release date, right?
Not really. No. I think at the moment we're about halfway through something playable, and within the next couple of months we're going to be giving something to testers to see whether what we're making is enjoyable to play. Otherwise, we're going to need a fairly severe rethink on things.
Yeah, and is it so it's Unity based? It's full 3D, and
Yep. We've even got a little bit of motion capture in there as well.
Oh wow.
We finally hit on a system for building scenes. So part of the thing is that we've got to work on it in a way that both Ben and I can work on the project without it sort of creating overlaps or what's the word? Yeah, so that it's all compatible with each other. So we finally hit on a way that both creates nice scenery and and is done smoothly. So we it's kind of plug in. So a lot of the characters they could operate in an environment where there'd be no walls, no floors, no objects. They'd just be floating around in a vacuum of nothingness, and then Ben can drag and drop his scene straight into it, and ding, then we've got the nice looking city all around.
Oh yeah. That sounds like that sounds really cool. I remember seeing some of that mocap also, and there's a lot of very entertaining. You should go look at James Dearden Technocrat Games timeline. He's got a lot of entertaining dances. And who's doing that? Is that you doing all the mocap yourself?
The dancing one, I bought that from it's a package of a Unity asset, but some of the mocap I've been doing myself with a Kinect camera.
Oh,
and
I
a
see.
bit of cleanup in Blender. And the cleanup is the awkward part of it, but it's good for things like pick up animations or shrugs, gestures, pointing. But with a Kinect, there's only so far you can go with it. You step more than a meter or two away from it, and it gives up on life.
Yeah. It's If you want to see I think Max Lau and Regis doing some interesting things. There's some very very. I mean, it's good. It's cool that you to see them fully fleshed out, and so those guys are the main protagonists are going to be returning to Technobabylon 2?
In a manner of speaking, yes. They're going to be, Dr. Lau and Dr. Regis are sort of partners to... So the protagonist throughout the whole of this game is Latha. She's ended up joining Cell following the end of the previous game, and she's not quite fitting in with the culture of it, as it were. She's the cyberpunk in this situation. She's not fitting in with the situation. Everyone else there except Regis is kind of feeling that she's in there because of nepotism, and it's up to you to either prove them right or toe the line and become part of the machine.
That sounds very interesting. I shouldn't say anything about the ending of Technobabylon 1, but that sounds. I remember you say something like you wanted to make. I think you said something like you wanted to make this a little more actual cyberpunk than the first one, if I'm not mistaken.
I think my perspective on what this game needs is altered severely.
Oh, okay.
But it's sort of at the moment my main concern is making it fun to play, and actually a big part of it is making sure that it still works on people's computers, because 2D AGS game, it'll run on almost everything. But now we've got 3D graphics with real-time reflections, and Ben is having a fantastic time playing with all of the possibilities for graphics. But I'm trying to rein him in here and there when it comes to the kind of cost it causes to systems. So I think we finally reached a situation where the results he's getting aren't going to melt people's computers, and we might be able to get it on mobile as well. Touch wood.
Yeah. That's definitely if you can get it on mobile. I mean, a lot of the point and click market is on mobile, so that's one thing I actually. Yeah, I mean, like the game we're working on is also Unity, and I had to buy a new computer to even run the game that I was working on. I was like, sorry everybody, I can't actually stream this game because it's running at one frame per minute right now. So and so I was like, can we tune it? I mean, it has amazing graphical abilities, volumetric lighting, and just crazy amounts of graphical. I mean, a lot of high-powered graphics can be had. But I was like, I also want to. I can reinstall Deus Ex on my microwave now, so I want people who go every time they hear Deus Ex, they hashtag reinstall Deus Ex, and then they post that picture. I want those people to be able to run this game on their computer. Okay, so if possible.
I remember a few years ago, 2005 or so, I tried installing Deus Ex on my old 486, and gosh, that was literally a slideshow. We got through the intro after about 4 hours of
Yeah. yeah. And then, yeah. I mean, like, it will run. I installed it on 486. That's like 90s, right? That's like.
Oh yeah, that was our computer from 1996.
Okay, yeah. Deus Ex, well, it came out in 2000, so might not.
This our machine was sort of before 3DFX was a thing.
Oh yeah.
Pre-Pentium.
Yeah. Pre-Pentium, yeah. I had somebody who was like trying to play Terminus Machina, and they're like, somebody from like, what was it? I want to say Lithuania. I can't even remember. They're like, I can't. Your game is causing my computer to overheat, and I think he was running something ancient. It was like one of those beige boxes, and I was like, oh my god, are you like working for the? You know, it was like some government. I don't know where he got that computer from, but he's like, but yeah, it was. It does still run though. There's a lot of obviously if you update with all those old games have all these graphical updates with revision and all kind of other. That's gonna tax your system a little more. I noticed that on my computer when I try to run Deus Ex, and if I run it in the highest made for DirectX 11 or whatever it is now, it definitely slows down a little more. And so yeah, but. Yeah, I mean, I'd like for I do hope that Technobabylon will run on Technobabylon 2 runs in as many systems as it can without trading off too much of the visuals. Yeah, it's always hard to balance that kind of stuff. But I do think a lot of the point and click. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think Dave Gilbert's ideal goal at the moment is to get things running on Switch. In an ideal world, he'd like to figure out, because he's managed to crack getting things converted from AGS to iPhone, but AGS to Switch would be a tremendous boon for him. I mean, one of my side projects at the moment, when I'm bored of working on Technobabylon 2, I go back. I've also been putting Technobabylon 1 together in Unity as well. And people saying I'm mad just for rebuilding the whole thing, but can't knock it if it works. All the stuff's already there. We don't need any new voice recording. All the art and graphics are ready to go.
Yeah, and then you can get it out to a lot more systems, right? If you get it in Unity.
Oh yeah, Switch, Android, PS4, PS3, Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, that's definitely because AGS is only Windows. I mean, right now the default is Windows and Linux basically. That's it. I don't know if has there been any develop on the engine side. I haven't really been keeping up on it, but.
Me neither. I haven't actually used it since 2015 now.
Oh, yeah. I'm still I'm working on two projects. So yeah, the other one is like Nearview 2, and I'm still currently. I'm trying not to do as much as I can of programming because I don't know. It's kind of like I don't know where everything will be by the time I finish this game, and it's going to be 2020, and everyone's like, playing this on some kind of fancy VR thing. I don't know. Who knows where it's going to be? So I'm just kind of making the writing and the assets and then maybe I'll do the coding later. And if I could do it, but yeah, if you could do it in Unity, I mean, this is to developers generally. If you can do it in Unity at least ports to so many different engines. So it's a good plan. Yeah, and oh yeah, how's Ben? I think Ben is the only Wad Jedi developer I haven't collected in my Wad Jedi Pokemon game. But it's Ben. Yeah, go ahead.
He's working on about 3 projects at the moment as well for Wajit. There's also that Vampire one, Nighthawks. He's working with Richard Cobbett on that one. Oh yeah. So he's been doing that. His 2D art has gotten really amazing with that because there's a lot more. It's kind of, as we were saying, it's kind of visual novel-y. Visual novel-ish. There's a lot more writing and pictures to it. But he's also been experimenting with 3D for Technobabylon 2, and he has picked up. So he is scary fast when it comes to learning things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, like all the art for so many of the Wajit games, like it's you can kind of see how. I mean, I don't want to say any of the games are less good. I mean, they all have their own charm, but you can definitely see how he's improved, and he's jumped to 640, right? 640 by 484 for unavowed, or 640 by, as opposed to 300. It's like 600 resolution now. So that's a whole another thing too.
Yeah, that was an impressive shift to begin with, and I think we had a bit of a we had to go get the logic of 3D down to begin with, but now a lot of working in 3D is about recycling, so getting him in habits for that has been a key point of that. But yeah, he's picked up so much on it, and I think Dave should be worried that Ben will go off and find a job that pays better.
Yeah, well, 3D. I mean, there's always people looking for really good 3D designers. Like for our in our team, we hired on like a full time level. We have like about 5 or 6 people actually working on it. I don't do all the hiring. I get to be Warren Spector. I get to sit around and go like, hey, you know what? I think I want a concentration camp here with 2,000 people. Okay, make it happen, or you're all fired. That's what. And I just get to. I'm like the ultimate idea guy. It's weird. I didn't understand how the hell this thing happened, but it's like somebody played Terminus Machina and the Aaron guy, and he's like, I really want you to make a game, and I really want you to kind of like take control. I'm like, I'm making new for you, but I don't have time for that. And he's like, no, I'll pay everyone else to work on your game, and you just tell them what to do. That's what I'm like. All right, man. Okay, well, I'll tell you what to do. We're gonna make a Deus Ex 2018, and it's gonna be like even better than that. I mean, that's what I hope anyway. I don't know if we'll achieve it, but yeah, and I mean,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. If Warren Spector will produce our game for us and help us out too, that would also be cool. Warren Spector, creator of Deus Ex, if you could, we are gonna actually talk to him. That would be kind of actually. Then I guess I would be replaced, and he'd be the ideas guy. So actually, no, stay away, Warren Spector, stay away. Anyways, yeah, so gonna be signing out. Yeah, I gotta go to lunch. Anything else you want to talk about? Where can we find your stuff, or anything else you want to say?
Twitter's where I'm putting things up at the moment mostly. I haven't updated my website in years, but I should. Anyway, follow me on Twitter if you want to see what I'm up to. I'm putting up details of what's going on. Characters dancing here and there, bits of motion capture. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of Twitter is just like it's really easy, and it's it's where a lot of people are, and yeah, I mean, I keep an eye on all of James' stuff, and it's always entertaining. I love seeing anything that he puts out there. I'm a massive fan of Technobabylon, so anytime I see it brings a warm, fuzzy, every time I see the glassy eyes and the oh my yes, I get this warm fuzzy feeling from what's that guy's name? Mr. Stepford. Every time I see Mr. Stepford pop up, I just get this nostalgia for creepy, weird androids. So really, do
the
follow.
Best kind.
Yeah, do follow. That's like one of the most. I see that phrase all the time now, and it's like it's gonna be your call sign. It's like gonna be a global, international thing. It's gonna be like the oh my yes. I see people say that. Even people I don't even know who play Technobabylon. I just see it pop up, and some people know what it is. So that's pretty cool.
And that's what caught on rather than THE Foods.
Oh yeah, Jeffy. Yeah, is Jeffy gonna make a comeback? I forgot to ask that.
She absolutely is. Yep. we can't go on without Sheffy the chef, can we?
No, that was like that sold the game. I was like, I saw Sheffy the chef, and I was like, yeah, $15 full price sold. Sheffy is we're talking about this. Sheffy is the character early on in the game. You will know Sheffy after after you see her, and a very entertaining voice. The voice actors the same voice actors for Sheffy.
We haven't settled on any vocal talent yet. We're hoping to get Jessica Pepper back to play Sheffy, but at the moment it looks like we might need to recast Dr. Lau as well, because people's circumstances change. But I'd like to get everyone back, because I think once the second games come out, people are going to be playing them one after the other and then wondering, hang on a minute, what's happened here? Why does she sound different?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's really great. I'm really looking forward to it. I think all these games are on sale, so stop listening to this. Go and buy all the amazing Wag Jedi games, including Technobabylon, and I would have not. I always say this, but I would never have made Neophyte without Primordia and Technobabylon. I wasn't even really a huge point and click fan until I played Primordia and Technobabylon. So yeah, I owe a lot to these guys, and also for coming on my podcast. James was the first guy to come on my podcast when I basically started, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So thanks a lot for even taking the time to talk to some weird dude from Hawaii who's into cyberpunk.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Yeah, and you can find me. Silver Spook Games is at Silver Spook minus the E, and just Google. Don't click on all the silver spoons and all the rich people. I am not one of those people. I'm Silver Spook, not Silver Spoon Games. That's the other. Anyways, and then Neophyte's also Neophyte's on sale, so keep an eye out for that, or go pick it up right now. And anyways, you have any good sign out phrases? I'm still really bad at it. You have a really good sign out catchphrase?
See you in the future.
That's as good as we're gonna. I always say keep your mirror shades polished. That's my weird thing. All right. Anyways,
don't get hacked.
Don't get.